Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. Are you looking forward to a worldwide war? Our world is. We've got governments all around the world who are gearing up and planning for the day when they will have to go to war on that large scale. Apparently, we conduct what are called simulated war games. Simulated in the sense that these are computer generated. No human beings, no equipment goes out and does anything. A corporation known as the RAND Corporation has been running these tests, I guess, for the government. And they've been doing it for a number of years. And recently, these war games have demonstrated that the red aggressor forces, that's anybody that's not us or our Western allies, that the red aggressor force often destroys the United States F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters on the runway, sends several naval fleets to the bottom of the sea, and destroys U.S. military bases, and through electronic warfare takes control of critical military communication systems. In short, every scenario whereby Western forces are caught off guard, a gruesome, simulated annihilation occurs. It occurs of some of the most modern of U.S. war machines. Robert Work, a former Deputy Secretary of Defense with years of wargaming experience, explains that, quote, "In every case I know of, the F-35 rules the sky when it's in the sky, but it gets killed on the ground in large numbers." According to an organization called Breaking Defense, as Russia and China develop fifth-generation fighters with hypersonic missiles, things that rely on sophisticated base infrastructure like runways and fuel tanks are going to have a hard time. Things that sail on the surface of the sea are going to have a hard time. That's why the 2020 budget coming out this week retires the carrier USS Truman decades early and cuts 2 amphibious landing ships. It's also why the Marine Corps is buying the jump jet version of the F-35, which can take off and land from tiny ad hoc airstrips. But how well they can maintain a high-tech aircraft in low-tech surroundings is still an open question. Meanwhile, speaking purely hypothetically, of course, he says if we went to war in Europe, there would be one Patriot battery moving, and it would go to Ramstein, and that's it. The U.S. has 58 brigade combat teams across the continent, but doesn't have anti-air and missile defense capabilities required to handle a barrage of missiles from Russia. RAND's war games show how U.S. armed forces experience the most substantial losses in one scenario after another and still can't thwart Russia or China from accomplishing their objectives, annihilating Western forces. RAND also war games cyber and electronic attacks in the simulations. In these, Russia and China tend to cripple U.S. communication networks. Quote, "Whenever we have an exercise and the Red Force really destroys our command and control, we stop the exercise." This reality was offered without a trace of humor. Beijing calls this system destruction warfare. They aim to attack the American battle network at all levels relentlessly, and they practice it all the time. The Air Force asked RAND to formulate a plan several years ago to improve outcomes of the war games in favor of the U.S. One analyst said we found it impossible to spend more than $8 billion a year to fix problems. That's $8 billion for the Air Force. Triple that to cover the Army and Navy Department, which includes the Marines. And you get $24 billion. These experts were less concerned about the near-term risk of war, citing the fact that China and Russia aren't ready to fight because their modernization efforts haven't been completed. Any major conflict is unlikely for another 10 to 20 years. So, we're talking about what our enemies might have 20 years from now? Or what we expect them to have 20 years from now. The analysis here, $24 billion a year for the next 5 years would be a good expenditure to prepare the military for World War III. Now, all this is very, very shocking, considering that the United States spent nearly 3 times as much as the second biggest war power, China, in 2017. With the defense budget stuck around $700 billion a year for the remainder of President Trump's term, America's war hawks are inciting fear through simulated war games with one purpose only: demand more taxpayers' money for war spending. Now, it's left up to you and to me to decide whether that analysis at the end of the article explanation is valid or not. The whole thing sounds just a little surreal. It's hard to believe that we have gotten this far and we're this underprepared. But it does make you wonder. The Bible talks about a worldwide conflagration. And for decades, generations, we have not been able to comprehend anything like that. The major nations of the world have all been, compared to the United States or compared to West, substandard, to say the least. These reports indicate that they're making great progress. They're spending a lot of money. And it may be they'll run out of money before they get where they want to go. These nations are not particularly wealthy. We have, I've forgotten which state it is. There's a state, I'll say California, that has an economy as big as Russia's. And if that's not the truth, then it's at least 2 or 3 of our states. I mean, they don't have that big an income, and they're spending it crazy. So it makes you wonder. But we are moving toward a day when there will be a conflagration of this sort. We just pray that as Americans we'll be ready. And we pray as Christians we'll be ready. You ready?